Great. Okay, so first, I just want to thank you, Ginat, for inviting me and also for all the great work that you've been doing in this forum. I've been lucky enough to attend some, and you've just gathered so many wonderful, wise speakers and teachers. So it's really been terrific. And I'm coming to you from my kitchen, where normally I would cook, my favorite hour to cook, because it's only 7 in the morning here in New York. But I'm just going to talk. So I thought I could start with a short introduction and then dive into some of the things I've learned in grad school and how it connects with macrobiotics. And that's part of the reason I haven't been teaching much on Zoom, is because I'm in a pretty rigorous master's program that I spend about 35 hours a week working on, in addition to teaching, pretty much full time. So Ginat, how would you like to do it if we have a small group? I mean, I think people could put questions into the chat, and then I'd leave it to you as to whether you think it's worth interrupting me, or we can just wait and do the questions at the end. Okay, up to you, your discretion. So I just want to say to start that Denny Waxman was my first counselor and then my teacher for over 30 years. He was open-minded, patient, professional, and without being a formal academic, he embodied so many qualities that we value in academia. So he encouraged me in everything I did, including doing this program. And so as my counselor and my teacher and somebody that I confided with and consulted with a lot, I really miss him every day. And I'd like to dedicate this talk to his memory. So after I became certified as a macrobiotic counselor through Dennys School in Philadelphia, called the Strengthening Health Institute, I scribed for him for many years. That was his system. And before the pandemic, he would come to New York and see clients all day, and he always had a scribe taking notes by hand, and then we were available to clients, for questions and things that he might not have time for. He was sort of encouraging me to start to counsel, even though I never felt ready. But having young children of my own, I began to realize that really the way to help change the way people eat is through the children. Because, in most cases, children really rule the table. You want nothing more than to nourish your children and to watch them eat and grow. So I began to think about how I could reach parents through children. And I decided the way to do this would really be through education of children in the schools. So for the past 15 years, and I started even before that, but officially for 15 years, I've been sort of sneaking macrobiotics into mainstream Jewish day schools and secular schools in New York City. So, and of course, I would probably not dare to say that to any other group other than this one. So, you have to market yourself. So I created over 25 different really fun curricula, which create a framework for teaching, cooking, and nutrition education. But, I never call it macrobiotics because parents may not sign up. And I noticed that a lot of the parents of children that do sign up are in the health field, and more children of doctors and nurses and dietitians. So that's really interesting. So I always make it really fun. And then at the end, I say, and by the way, it's all plant-based. So some parents, really get excited about that, and others get really scared. So some of the curricula I teach one very popular one called Global Wraps, in which we look at the identities, the roots of each of the children in the class. And every week we honor their culture by cooking a wrap from that culture. So every culture has its wrap, from Italian calzone to Chinese egg rolls to Japanese nori rolls. But I do a plant-based version, and the kids really love it. So I also teach one called umami. I've kind of stretched umami to mean many things, partially cooking with all 5 senses, teaching them about the 6 flavors. And then I sprinkle into all these classes macrobiotic teachings that I learned from Denny, really more about
how to watch this Zoom, and I'm not getting any voice.
Okay, go ahead.
Who's that? Anyway, so I sprinkle all of my teachings with more about how to eat than what to eat. So a few years ago, I realized more than a few years ago, that in order to really make any headway in the schools in New York City, you really have to have an advanced degree, which is why I went back to school to get a degree in nutrition education, a master's of science in nutrition education. As opposed to just nutrition science. I really liked this program because it was education focused, but of course, in order to teach it, you have to learn it. So, the first, the first courses in this program are really nutrition science. And I was very prepared to kind of take issue with a lot of the principles that I thought I was going to be taught. But I was really pleasantly surprised on many counts. So I thought I could go through some of the principles of nutrition science that I've learned, and then open it up to any questions. So the one thing that really pleased me in the very first 5 minutes of my studies was that nutrition science really believes that many diseases are caused by dietary patterns, and they can be mitigated through changes in diet, not through classic Western medicine and medication. So we learn, that of the 7 leading causes of death, 4 of them are directly linked to diet: heart disease, cancers, which are the top 2, strokes, and diabetes mellitus, of course. The ones they say are not related to diet are chronic lung disease, and so we're not entirely sure about that, but we know that maybe there's not, science-based evidence linking it. Accidents, which, of course, may not seem directly related to diet, but as we know, diet can affect our awareness and our ability to focus and be alert. And Alzheimer's, which is another wide open topic for science. So, of course, in academia, you can't make any statement without backing it up with evidence from a credible peer-reviewed source, which meant that I couldn't use most of the sources that I was used to using, from Denny's book to Paul Pritchard's book to all of the Kushi's books. So in order to write anything about macrobiotics in my papers, and I had 3 a week, I'd need to find something in a scientific journal. So I began researching macrobiotics, and really I only found 1 article about macrobiotics in general that was published in 1983. So I was sure that none of my teachers would accept it because, generally you want to find articles that are between 5 and 10 years new, since food is changing and science is always evolving. But I used that article a lot. And I found many, then I just began to, I think like in the 2nd week, I said, you know what, I need to create files of the research that I want to include. So I just began looking for articles on shiitake mushrooms, on chewing, found many on chewing, on, timing of eating and eating before sleep, seaweed, plant-based diets in general. Of course, there's a lot on plant-based eating. So there's a lot of scientific evidence that supports all of these things. And I just began to use it a lot in my pieces. One thing I noticed, I wrote a book called Vegetables for Breakfast because in my fertility journey, I found that adding vegetables to my breakfast, I thought really made a huge diet in just really transforming my whole condition. And breakfast is huge in science. I mean, in terms of the schools, eating breakfast has become sort of the cause célèbre in terms of the health and academic performance of children. So,
do you agree with that? Oh,
do I agree with that?
Because I
so
think
one
Denny
thing,
says-
Denny always said that if you're going to skip a meal, breakfast is the meal to skip. And, I think that every body is different and you really need to know your body. Children, young children particularly, shouldn't be fasting for 16 or 18 or 20 hours, which is what they can end up doing if they eat dinner early and then skip breakfast. So, people my age, a lot of people I hear say, I'm really not in the mood to eat in the morning. I can't function without breakfast. I'm without breakfast right now, which is really rare. But I eat a really, really hearty breakfast every day because I get up really early. I start my schoolwork like at 4:30 in the morning. And so by 6, I'm really ready to eat, but not everybody is. I do think it's important for children, not only for their daily, the energy and the fuel they need, but for habits, lifelong habits. I see with teenagers, they're on kind of a different clock. So I have this running battle with my 16-year-old who doesn't like to eat breakfast, but we compromise. And I really think a vegetable, which is not part of any of the government subsidized breakfasts, but a raw carrot or a pickle or a piece of raw celery, to me, makes all the difference in terms of my the way I metabolize and the way I digest my breakfast. So interestingly, in the first week of my studies, in a survey of world diets, my teacher's very first lecture really misrepresented macrobiotics. So, she said it's a totally vegan diet, which can create many deficiencies in terms of vitamins. And this really, really offended me because, as we know, that's really, a lot of counselors recommend small amounts of fish. And I know that recently, a lot of people are even recommending small amounts of carefully sourced red meat and carefully sourced eggs. So I went right to the books, and I actually found that my textbook, Understanding Nutrition, actually gave a very accurate a picture of macrobiotics, but my teacher may have had something against it. In the textbook, it says that some vegetarians choose to follow a macrobiotic diet. They select natural organic foods and embrace a Zen-like spirituality. Okay, I don't know if I wouldn't necessarily say it that way. But in other words, a macrobiotic diet represents a way of life, not just an eating pattern. Such a diet emphasizes whole grains, legumes, and vegetables with small amounts of fish, fruits, nuts, and seeds. Practices include selecting locally grown foods, eating foods in their most natural state, and balancing cold, sweet, and passive foods with hot, salty, and aggressive ones. So, not totally accurate, but not focusing on the deficiencies of the diet. So I would say that some of the things I just mentioned are really things that data-driven nutrition science overlooks. So, in making blanket statements, it overlooks the importance of eating locally for health reasons as well as policy-driven reasons. They do talk a lot, when it comes to policy, of course, and sustainability. Many recommend eating locally, but as we all know, there are real health reasons to eat locally. And also eating seasonally. I find the recommendations are purely based on vitamins and minerals and macronutrients without any consideration for seasonality, which is also affected, of course, by where you're geographically located. And the main thing that I found missing in all of the courses that I've taken is the emphasis on the importance of cooking well at home. That's something that's really just not addressed at all. And I know I've looked around and most of these programs don't offer any kind of courses in cooking at all, which I think is a huge hole. And I'm hoping maybe I can fill that. There's a ton of research on eating in a timely fashion, but I notice it gets very watered down and it kind of ends up is try not to eat right before you go to sleep rather than an emphasis on eating regular meals at regular times during the day. And being so data-driven has one major drawback, which I think is that it doesn't include the je ne sais quoi of food and eating and cooking, meaning, the energetics and the importance of attitude and approach, because all of those things are really hard to measure and really hard to quantify, although, scientists are always working on ways to measure them. So, I think that, it's really important for people to understand that no two vegetables could ever be alike. No two carrots, even in the same bunch, are alike. No two soils are alike. The nutrients in any two soils can't possibly be alike. And that really, kind of gets in the way of the science, but it should really be something that is addressed. Denny, when talking about choices that you have to make every day at every meal, Denny used to tell this great story. He always used to use this example of, okay, so you're traveling, you're in a foreign city, it's 1 o'clock and you haven't eaten lunch. So you've heard that there's this fantastic macrobiotic restaurant where they grow their own food, but it's like really far out of town. You're not sure how to get there. It might take you an hour, so you wouldn't be sitting down until 2 o'clock. Or you look up and there's a diner right on the corner. So which do you choose? So Denny always said, you go to the diner and you order, you get a side of broccoli and you get some white rice or, whatever grain they're offering, and you just really enjoy it. And as we know, there are some great cooks in all over. And then there are also some angry cooks, and we don't want to go to those restaurants. So the other thing I would say is I've really learned that nutrition science is not very much about food. It's really about the body and how food affects it. And, Denny used to teach a course called The Power of Food, which really addressed these issues, but it included the food itself. So, so that's where I find this lacking. And I was really surprised that, I thought I might learn a lot more about food. And I have to say, I've learned so much about so many things. I mean, including technology and marketing and a lot about epidemiology and public health and research. But I really haven't learned a thing about food. Other than, no, I mean, I would say on all of the lists of, as we studied each vitamin and each mineral, maybe there were a few times I was surprised at certain foods that were on the list, on those particular lists. But I really haven't learned much about food, I have to say. I learn about food every day, and I think we all can. I learn about food, from farmers and from farmers markets and just from shopping. And but I do think it would be nice if nutrition programs included more about food itself. I know it's hard. It's even hard to teach it. One thing we learn a lot about is all of the food deserts in this country. And, in New York City, there's this huge irony of, where I live, I can get almost anything. I have access to so many different foods, whereas I can go 50 blocks north and those things aren't available. So one thing I've learned as a teacher of this work is that I always try to shop in the neighborhood in which I teach, so that the students and their families will have access to whatever I'm teaching. And that's hard with some macrobiotic products like umeboshi plums, for example. And, and not everybody has internet access or the ability to order online, where, some of the best kosher macrobiotic products, I sort of have to get online. But this is a huge issue in the States. I don't know about Israel, but food insecurity is a really pressing issue. So that's sort of what I wanted to say. I mean, I guess I feel that I'm finishing up this program August 20th. So I'm taking my last 2 courses, and I guess the big takeaway is I'm just much more conversant with mainstream medical and health professionals, which seems to make me more credible. And also, in the academic world, and I mean, I have to sell. I'm not on staff anywhere. I mean, I've been a TA in my program at American University, but I'm a free agent, so I have to sell my programs and myself to administrators and parents, and I guess I've gotten a lot of tools to do that through this program. So I guess the other thing I wanted to say is I'm offering everyone a discount on my book, Vegetables for Breakfast, that you can buy on my website, youarebecauseYouEat.com. If you use the discount code RICE, RICE, all caps. I think I might just have to fix it because my website was down on Friday. I'm going to do that as soon as we finish. But if you're in Israel, I can give you a discount on the book, but I don't know how to ship to Israel other than through, I can have someone in my family bring them next time they come. My daughter just got home a week ago from a semester in Tel Aviv, so she's not going back anytime soon, but somebody else would be going.
Wonderful.
So it's not on Amazon. It's only on my website. Amazon, I can't control Amazon. Only if you order directly from me. It says buy direct on my website. There's a page. I should give you the link. It's youarebecauseYouEat.com/book. And then you would click on buy direct. So any questions? Should I look in the chat?
No, I'm monitoring that for you.
Okay.
This is a very impressive presentation. Food insecurity is part of the generalized social insecurity.
Yeah.
This is Mike. Nancy immediately runs into the implications of a consumer society when she notes that there is no introduction to cooking in the courses she surveys. The power of food is a presentation Nancy might do along with Susan. What a wonderful idea. Have you
Mm.
back. That's terrific. That's good. I wanted to mention just whenever any kind of study of macrobiotics, scientific study of macrobiotics is proposed or comes up or whatever, I never can get past what you just addressed about it's so much the effect of our mind and effect of differing realities and the effect of changes and lifestyle and thought processes. And how can you possibly do anything scientific about an energy-based program?
Well, I mean, this is the challenge to scientists of how to measure certain, how do we measure the effect of nutrition education on children, right? So I'm in a course right now called Nutrition Education Methods, and the big project is teaching a lesson, but it comes with, 7 papers before we eventually teach, which is wonderful for me because it's just really fun to spend this much time planning, a 40-minute lesson. How do you measure the impact of a lesson? I love when I teach kids and then I'll see their parents on the street and they'll say, oh my gosh, we chewed at the table last night. Everybody chewed 30 times. So, that's fantastic. But how do you really measure how that's going to affect their digestion? How, what they'll really take with them as they grow and thrive in the world and as they have children of their own. But I'm working on it. I'd like to find a way, there's just, a lot of anecdotal evidence that we all have. And, as having had the privilege of scribing for Denny for so many years and really observing the progress and the changes and the healing that, that his recommendations affected was very powerful for me. But again, I don't know how, I mean, it's a shame that some of this wasn't tracked, maybe more carefully, but there are just so many stories of, of being healed through his wisdom and just his brilliance. He was, a brilliant diagnostician, and he had an intuitive, ability that was uncanny. I mean, the way I met Denny was, I think the first time. So I was living in Italy for many years and I came back to the States and I could not eat. Everything just repulsed me. I mean, nothing appealed to me except the things that I had not been eating in Italy, which were pretzels and grapefruit juice. And so I sort of went on, that was all I could eat. And then one day I woke up and I literally couldn't move. Like I couldn't get out of bed. Nothing was working. And I called my yoga teacher, Alan Bateman. And I said, can you come up here and help me? I can't move. And he said, no, you come down here and you see Denny Waxman. He's counseling here and he's going to help you. And I said, I don't know how I can do that. I can't move. He said, just do it. So I did. And I walked into Denny. Denny was renting a little tiny office space from Alan. And I walked in and he looked at me like really intensely. And he said, come, sit down. I sat down and he said, you're eating something really hard and dry and baked and salty. And I almost fell off my chair, like I was in. And then he said something citrusy. So I don't know how he knew because we had never met. And he just got it. And one way I got off pretzels, I still think they're pretty delicious, but was in taking many of his courses, I was saying, I think pretzels are pretty delicious. He said, you know what, take a pretzel, put it in your mouth and chew it try to chew it like 100 times and see how in the progression of chewing, how it begins to taste. And, if you notice something like a fresh peach or, a delicious vegetable, the more you chew it, the more flavorful and the more integrity it seems to have in your mouth. And something like a pretzel just, suddenly it starts out tasting yummy and salty, and then it just gets dry and crumbly and kind of, much less delicious as you go.
So did that cure you of your pretzel addiction?
So, yes, I mean, and certainly don't eat them much, but if I go to a party or something and they're out, and also for Shavuot this year, I taught soft barley pretzels to teach children about the barley harvest and barley as a grain, because it's a grain that, here in the States, most children don't eat. I've tried teaching barley salad, but the pretzels, soft barley pretzels, went over. They were a big hit. But, each child made one, and they're not hard, they're soft and boiled first.
Hi, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I just, it's by accident I find the seminar, and I'm so pleased to meet you. And so I'm very new on a microbiotic. I've been on a microbiotic 9 months. I'm in Tzvat. I don't know if you've heard Tzvat, Israel and Tzvat.
Yes, I spent a lot of time there.
Yeah, so we moved here 1 year ago from Canada. 33 years in Canada, and born and raised in Moldova, Russia. Yeah, so my question to you, I'm having a hard time. My healer, I'm saying healer because I've been diagnosed with the oncology, breast oncology, and I choose to go microbiotic treatment after some conventional medicine. And so now I'm 9 months on the microbiotic, but I do have very limited recipe. I'd like to have a little bit more. Is your book offering more recipe? Because I think whatever you're saying, it's exactly what my healer, because it's all to go, because so many microbiotic, but my healer is very strict, like with the local products, with like no dark shades. So I think it's a lot of recalling. So my question is, your book has many recipe?
So my book is all vegetable recipes, well, with some grains, but in terms of, first, just one question, are you working with somebody regularly who sees you
Yeah.
live?
Yeah,
Okay.
but the problem is like, yeah, she's very good. She wrote the book. She has phenomenal book. My healer, she's it's in Hebrew. The book, my healer, by the way, it's around 80 plus, I guess. And we have
in Tzvat?
In Tzvat, she's a phenomenal.
What is, because we lived there for a while, and
Wow.
and we knew some
Esther Lizard, do you know her? Esther.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So she's my healer. But we have, I don't speak Hebrew, and she speaks English, but fairly limited. But but her training in Switzerland, and that she put the book together, that book, but it's in Hebrew. And so I'm only trying to learn. It doesn't happen so fast, unfortunately.
She also learned with Denny, because Denny actually connected us. But there is some
Danny who? Because I missed the beginning of the class. Danny who? What's his last name?
Denny Waxman.
Denny
Blessed
Waxman.
memory. He passed away recently. And I mean, there are some great macrobiotic cookbooks. I think Christina Perillo has some books that are, that have easy, quick recipes. My favorite is, I'm just looking in my bookshelf. I could email you a list.
Yeah, I
If
would
you-
love that. I would
if
love
you-
that.
What's your email?
See, maybe I could recommend if you send it to me and then I could give it to everyone, including our caller and
Oh,
everyone
sure.
who'd like that kind of
Sure.
thing.
So I'm thinking of
Very much.
Kathleen. Sure.
Should I
Um,
put it in the chat, my email?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And I'll send the list to Ginat. Yeah, I have a lot of favorites.
But do you feel, I know Esther Elizar has the best name all over the Israel and beyond. Do you think like I'm in a good hand?
Yeah, I mean, yes, she actually cooked for us a little bit when we were in Spot, and I really enjoyed her food.
Is that okay? Because I
energy.
admire you. I admire your personality, but I just wanted to, because practically now I'm only in her care.
You're only in
Her care, like she's the one who taking care of me.
in
Of
her
course,
care. Yeah.
Of course, the God number one who is healing. Let me see if I put, yeah, but it's been interesting journey with microbiotic. And I have to tell you, I start to enjoying so much. And I see so much wisdom in it. And I like the energy of each product. But my problem, I need to learn more, understand about yin yang, and that what the energy of each produce. Because now she's telling me I can eat cherry because it's dry. You can eat cherry, but I need to understand more why I can eat more cherry now. I understand it. Like I'd like to know which product produce which energy. For example, cherry produce more wet or cherry produce more dry. Like, do you know all the products already from heart?
So one thing I really recommend you do is, obviously talk to her and explore it with her, but also just take it, a vegetable or a fruit that you're curious about and really spend time with it with all 5 senses, looking at it, smelling it, touching it, and begin to try to explore for yourself its energetics and feel them for yourself. If the last thing you do is taste it and you really just spend time with a raw fruit or a raw vegetable, I think you can learn a lot. And then you can consult, there are sources that you can consult, including Esther. But I've found I started with just asking Denny a lot of questions, and he always encouraged me to find, the best way to learn something is really to discover the answers for yourself. So are you feeling a change in your body?
I'm afraid to jinx it, but she told me not to worry. I mean, I love the energy. We have a small hotel in Svat, like not big, small, but still I need to clean sometimes. I need to do booking. I'm on the phone sometimes more than I have to. But I feel, and it's very mounty, it's up and down, I feel like.
Are you in the old part of the city?
Yeah, we have a house on one mountain, and they have hotel in a different part of in the old city. Yeah. So I have to go up and down a lot. But thanks God, I do also exercise niche, like Japanese. I don't know if you've heard him. But I love it. I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of energy, and I like all the kind of kasha and porridges, and you just mentioned pearl. You just mentioned the
Barley?
name barley. I love barley. I think it's such a underestimated product, and it's I use now. Before we used to put in a chon, so now I just do it for myself a little bowl for a Shabbos. so it's amazing. I think for me, it's like I feel, first of all, I lost like 20 kilo.
Yeah.
I practically lost, but I don't know, it's like, make me alive.
I can feel it. You've got like a halo around you of energy, even on Zoom. So, I would encourage you to really keep exploring for yourself, and then, consulting and, checking in with Esther and with any sources that you have. There are so many great books.
Because that's what I'd like. If you can send me, I would appreciate it, because so many different microbiotic, but now make me feel so good. The Esther, so her school of thoughts and her school, because for example, lemon, some microbiotic recipes, they call for a lemon. She said, no lemon for you because of my condition as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I recommend that you see her. You're lucky that she's there and she can see you live, because it's really hard. It's really, I find Zoom is great, but it's hard.
Thank you. Such a small world now. Like, look, I see something on the Facebook, Rice community. I connected and I find you on a seminar. Who knows, my healer Esther? It's like you've been in Tzvat, Israel. It's like today the world becoming really small.
It's a small macrobiotic world.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Maya,
Yeah.
this is Ginat. I would like just to point out that the method that we are following is not microbiotic, but rather macrobiotic. Okay, that's all the difference. Yeah, because it's a large life rather than micro. So
I think it's my Russian. I think it's my Russian brother. I know you're absolutely right, but I think I'm also worried a little bit, with the public speaking, a little bit intimidated. Yeah, you're absolutely. Thank you for correcting me. It's macro.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Anything else? Let's see.
Nancy, when you told the people that what you're teaching is vegan, did they how'd they react?
When I tell parents, the truth is that I try, and so I don't usually, because I'm afraid I might lose people, and these kids are eating so much animal food. I'm always very surprised if parents do object, but I do use a little bit of carefully sourced cheese here and there, just to keep everyone in the game. I also, there's a lot of non-dairy, really delicious non-dairy cheeses here in the States, but many of them are nut-based and a lot of schools are nut-free. So I can't use those in school. I don't know if you know the brand Kite Hill. It's an Israeli chef in Los Angeles who's created these really, really delicious umami-filled non-dairy cheeses. And so I do, when they're not the best quality ones are nut-based, I think, because some of the others, have a lot of coconut oil and stuff. But I do bring them, I do slip them in here and there. And also some of my students are vegan, so I honor that, of course, and I wouldn't give them any, cheese.
So the follow-up to that, do you dare tell your teachers your view towards macrobiotics, the courses you're taking now? Oh, you do?
Well, the funniest thing was, in the very first course, we had to sort of write this introductory essay, and I very proudly wrote about all my training and my teachers. And my teacher wrote this, the head of the department, who I've become very close with, but she wrote me this very curt reply. Well, something like, I think when you begin to learn about evidence-based nutrition, a whole world will open up for you. And we've become really close, and she's been very open to a lot of my suggestions and a lot of my points of view.
I'd like to ask you another question. We have a few more minutes. There's a whole category, maybe I could say, of foods that sometimes we eat within a macrobiotic framework, and sometimes we are thinking, well, it's better maybe not to eat these foods. And I wonder if your training, I suppose, has influenced your choices. What brings it to mind is you just mentioned, well, no, not coconut oil. Or do you know what I'm talking about? Zucchini or olives, or what kind of oil, or there's, all of these kind of, some people now are into tomatoes, but not the skin of them, just the inside, or all kinds
cooked.
of. Or cooked.
Denny always recommended cooked tomatoes.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder just kind of how you make your choices and decisions on these kind of borderline products.
That's such a great question. And, having children, so I've got two kids, one's 16 and one's 22, and they're both here my 16-year-old is always here, but my 22-year-old is here, and she grew up really 100% macro, and people, we would be in a music class when she was 3, and they'd say, what did you have for breakfast? And she'd say collard greens. And the teacher would go, oh, come on, what did you really have for breakfast? Like, where did you learn that? And she's now, after spending a few years in Israel, her diet has changed a lot. So, I have to, I want everybody who comes to my table to eat and really enjoy the food. So that's something I consider all the time, more than I feed myself in one way and I feed others in another way, because I just, I need to really consider their palates and their whole, approach to eating and food. So my daughter, went to Israel to the army, and she just began eating a lot of meat. I know, this can happen, like just a real reaction, I think, to having not eaten it. So I, it's really case by case, Ginat, really, season by season, case by case, meal by meal. So, certain foods that are on the list of, sometimes I might only eat them if they're fresh picked from a garden. And, things like olives and olive oils, I look really carefully. I don't buy any olive oils that are sourced from various countries. Most olive oils in the supermarket these days are mixed from 4 or 5, even 6 countries, Mediterranean countries, and I really stay away from those. I have certain principles, but in terms of all of the foods on the sometimes lists, I really make those calls day by day, and audience by audience. I'm curious if anybody else has an answer to that.
I don't have an answer to that, but I'm a registered dietitian, and I did macrobiotics, clean several times when I needed it. And I find it evidence-based. I don't know why it never took the same path to advertise itself the same way, marketing. But I find when I started as a dietitian when I was, out of college, and then I switched out because it was so depressing for me. My father had died from cancer, and I had enough of sickness and hospitals, and I became an illustrator. And so my mind was open when the time came for macrobiotics, and I learned from Warren Kramer a lot living in Massachusetts. And I try sometimes to, we communicate, the dietitians have listservs where we have email on questions and issues. And I've taken copious amounts of careful time to explain macrobiotics a few times, and I've gotten a cold shoulder from several people. And some are like, yeah, that sounds good. But most of the research that's come out in the past decades, it came through the same path. I don't know if they stole the ideas from macrobiotics or if it was out there earlier, but I have the greatest respect for macrobiotics, and I find it evidence-based. And that whole attitude, evidence-based, it's bull, because the evidence is right or wrong and who sponsored it. Okay, that's all I had to say. And very nice talk. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I mean, I think that there needs to be more studies, you know, and just more publication of studies of macrobiotics. And also, I think, you know, macrobiotics somehow gets a bad rap. People say, oh, that's the brown rice diet, or that's the, you know, it's kind of, it's gotten, I think there was like a branding problem. I remember Denny had this idea to say, to use a tagline, fried, not baked. And I thought, wow, that might really bring people in, because a lot when I sometimes tell people that frying is preferable to baking, that baking, you know, really pulls everything out of food, they're shocked. You know, I really think there's just such an overload of information about food. And one, if you're not interested in food, and two, if you're interested, but it's not like, you know, it doesn't come easily to you. It's not something you connect with. It can just be so daunting. I see with parents, it's really hard to make decisions about what to buy and what to feed your children. And that's how so many parents end up just buying the same products over and over, or if they find a dish that their children enjoy, they just make it over and over. So there's just a lot that could be done by people like you know, to just, I think it's really changing like the approach and the way, just an attitude about food. There's a really beautiful children's book called No Ordinary Apple, about a kid who comes home from school and has a babysitter and says, you know, I want the candy. Where's the candy? And she says, oh no, we don't have any candy. We only have apples. And the kid says, apples? Are you kidding? Like, how boring is that? And she goes on to show this child how incredibly magical and unique this apple is. And I like to read that with kids, because I think that if they can begin to see food in that way, you know, a lot of people see it as something you just have to do, you know, eat, right? And so it's really about just getting people more interested and curious and excited about eating and food.
What's in the name of the Apple book? I'm sorry. Sorry, Mike. I just want the name of the book.
It's called No Ordinary Apple. And it's by, I can say, I'll put it on the list,
Okay.
Clara.
Okay.
It's a wonderful book. And then I sometimes, you know, you can read it with a child and then switch it to a strawberry or a peach or even a carrot.
So I have a suggestion for both Nancy and for Ellen. Are you already hooked into the Planetary website? You're part of the Planetary group? No,
I'm not.
Okay, I really suggest to both of you to participate closely with Alex and Donka at the Planetary, because they realize that there needs to be a fresh approach in this very troubled time that we're dealing with. And so they just had a big conference a few months ago outlining where we've come from. And pointing out some new directions that we can take that would encompass your concerns. So that would be the suggestion that I would make.
Theplanetary.com?
Planetary Health.com. The principals are Alex and Donka Jack.
Oh, related to Alex?
That is Alex.
Oh, okay. Oh, got it.
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs.
Okay, got it.
Okay. And then I made that suggestion insofar as Denny's power of food that you might want to take up with Susan. That would be eminently powerful in its own right. Because your presentation here today would knock the socks off of anybody coming in, fresh to the world of nutrition.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Susan is starting to teach very slowly. It is Sarah Marlowe, Clara. The author is Sarah without an H, Marlowe, Marlowe. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure. You spoke well, easily. You made it look easy.
One more question or no time? One more question.
I'll invite anybody who wants to get up and have a few minutes break and go ahead, Clara.
So you're teaching the children, and my question is the interaction between the parents who are so used to feeding the same thing over and over. Do you, maybe you could have classes with kids and parents, or do the parents come to you, or just how to influence the parents? Yeah.
So, well, first of all, one thing that's really important to me, but creates a ton of extra work for me is each child who takes each course makes a cookbook. And inside the cookbook is every recipe, but also lots of worksheets and other things that I do with the children. They also illustrate the cover and the back cover. I mean, right now, just for this week, I have to bind 80 cookbooks. And one school that I've been teaching in all year has 30 recipes and worksheets and illustrations. And so that's one way is, to send home this cookbook that some parents will actually really enjoy. And the other thing is we send home one of the schools that finally, after all these years, I'm teaching during the day in a Jewish day school as part of their science and Chumash curriculum. So we send home newsletters every week about what we've done, because everything that I cook is connected with the Jewish calendar. But it's an excellent, one thing I've really learned in school is how important multi-component learning is. And, community-wide, you really have to reinforce teaching on the individual, family, community, institution level. So I'm really working on that for next year, Clara, to offer maybe a family cooking class on Zoom to all of the children I work with, to their parents. Last week, I had the most amazing thing. This child who started with me 2 years ago, the day before the school started, her mother sent me an email. Oh, by the way, my child has never eaten anything that's not out of a package. Can you please fix that? And I was like, once a week in an hour cooking class, I'm going to fix that. So actually, this kid now loves greens, only wants green food. It's the craziest thing. I don't really know how it happened. And that's a case where I had to use a little cheese to get her to start to eat some vegetables. But I don't know, she's just on fire. She's almost 7 and all she ate was like graham crackers and potato chips. And now she loves real food. I thought for sure her mother was seeing, a dietitian and having like counseling or something.
That's fantastic. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that. I'm working with institutions, so I have to work with them. but I'm hoping to maybe be able to do a family cooking class so the children can also share what they've learned, and it's so powerful. I learned in the pandemic when kids and families cook in their own kitchen, because when they come to my kitchen, they see, I'm very low tech, but I do have beautiful equipment, but they see all the equipment and then they're like, we don't have that, but if they cook in their own kitchen, then they can easily do it again. And they often ask questions, should I use this pan or that pan? So it's really powerful.
That cookbook idea is fabulous. And can't you give them a session on how to bind their own cookbooks, for goodness sakes? Are you mad? 80 cookbooks?
Well, I can show you. I mean, I just laminate the cover and the back cover. They design it all, and then I just use ribbon and I tie it all together.
It's beautiful.
So, yeah, you're right. I mean, I guess, but I like to involve. It's hard to do. I do a lot of craft, but it's hard to really also cook something in an hour and then do a project like that. Especially with.
I thank you. This was a wonderful presentation. As I said,
Thank you. Thank everyone for coming, and
thank you so much.